We're going to talk about Monster, a Netflix special. A Netflix 9 episode. Is that considered a mini series? I don't know. I would say, yeah, it's a 9 episode mini series on Netflix about Kyle and what's the other brother's name? The Menendez brothers. Let's just say that. I remember this time in 1989. I happened to be in juvie at the time. I was in a place called Spofford when this was going down back in '89. And it took 7 years for these guys to go through 2 trials and then, of course, get the conviction and then the life sentence without the possibility of parole. I was told that they are actually, um, like Kim Kardashian is involved in trying to get these boys or these men, these adults, these grown men out. Because at the time I was 13, 14 years old. '89, I was 13 years old. And I was 14 in 1989. I'm 51 years old now. So these guys were 6 years older than me. So these guys are almost 60, almost 60-year-old men who are the war. There's a huge group of people that are fighting for these guys, these grown adult males to be released from prison. And I thought the acting was spot on, pretty amazing acting, especially from the father. The father's aspects, he was good. The mom was good. The boys were good. The attorneys were good. The jurors were good. Everyone did pretty dang good in this movie, this Netflix. Like it these people, they bring their A game to these Netflix movies. But I must be honest with my review on this Netflix series. Despite the lighting being great and the storytelling being great and so many other things just was so good about the movie, the acting, the directing, the storyline, the timeline, the background, the clothing. All these things were so spot on, so perfect. But I would be lying, I would be remiss if I didn't say that I was still very troubled by this series. It's 9 episodes, and it took me 5 days to watch the 9 episodes, which something that I could have probably done in 2 days. And why is it that it took me so long to watch this series? It's because it was so damn disgusting. It was. Let me just say this: I have an estranged brother. My brother and I, we don't talk for very good reasons. Um, uh, we're not close in any way, shape, or form. And like, if he was to pass today, I probably wouldn't know about it for a week, something like that. Uh, Gonna say hello, pumpkin time. I just okay. I was arrested for decent exposure. Do you like eating noodles? How are you, Big Mac LX? He's a liar. It's okay. Control. I don't mind trolling. Just make sure you tap the screen twice. If you tap the screen twice, that gives me a thumbs up. So feel free to troll, but tap the screen twice. And we have a situation where uh, is that a mosquito? We have a situation where it was like the first. two episodes. I might have watched the first two episodes back to back. And I found myself like tossing and turning, thinking about my brother, just super. Couldn't stop thinking about my bro for like another 2 days. So maybe this thing took me longer than 5 days to watch. Maybe it took me 8 days to watch, 7 days, 8 days to watch the nine episode series. And I found myself tossing and turning, thinking about my brother and our shitty relationship we have. And then I got back to watching the show, and then it talked about the father, like the dad. Here, let me just give myself a little more light. And then it was like, hold up, just give me 1 second. Let me just move this. All right. It just, it was a little like, how do I say? It was the father and mother's relationship and the way they described it. I think this is going to be a short review. Despite the fact that it was 9 episodes, and I could talk about these young men living in Calabasas with a father who was an immigrant from Cuba, Cuban immigrant who came to the United States of America, got himself a white girl, married her, put some babies in her, bust his ass, and then he was under this ideal system like the Spartans. You know how the Spartans, they were in the movie 300, how they took the babies and they just like left the babies, and the babies had to like crawl their way to finding food and what have you. And it was just like they were pushing this idea that the father was this really super uber duper aggressive guy who wanted his children to be like these Spartans, and so he used sex as a way to garner their, to build their strength up. And the movie started to get a little sick. I'd be lying if I didn't say that the movie became pretty damn sick. It was like, I'm just gonna go out and say it. This was a series that, if you are into that lifestyle in any kind of way, and I'm talking about that PH lifestyle, I don't want to say it on these algorithm streets. This is the movie for you. This was like one of these movies or one of these series that's going to be archived in those PH people's lives, where they get to go and they're not going to watch the last 4 episodes. They're just going to watch the first three. Let me see, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. So I guess they'll watch 4 episodes, and the last five they won't even watch. But the first four, because it just kept breaking down details of these unsubstantiated claims about the parent and the abuse that the parent and the mindset of the parent. So you got this huge Netflix machine that is just pumping out this how to guide on sickness and evil. And it just was pushing this sick, evil, methodical way of thinking for the PH people, for those people that are into that kind of thing. It was almost a how to guide on depravity. It was almost a how to guide on just sick, evil monstrosities of ways to destroy a family. And for us to really, and then here's the thing: the last couple of episodes, like, kind of like got away from that and was kind of showing just how sick these brothers were and how they truly just didn't want to lose their lifestyle of resting and dressing. You got the one brother who went to Princeton. He couldn't even keep his grades up. And then you have the other brother who's like a closeted homosexual. And then you have them living in Calabasas, California, where they're like burglars. It reminded me of a friend that I had. I used to have this friend that lived on 42nd Street and 11th Avenue. And on 42nd Street, between 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th Avenue, they have these, I don't know, maybe 50-story complexes here in New York City, in Manhattan. So 42nd Street, let's say between 10th and 11th, between 9th and 10th, between 9th and 10th, 10th and 11th, and 11th and 12th Avenues, they have these huge buildings, these residential buildings. And when I was coming up in the, let's say back in 1990, he lived there in one of those buildings. So we didn't have to like stop at the doorman. All the doormen knew who he was. Hey, how you doing? And one day I go over to his house. I went there, let's say 6 times. I even slept over a few times. And this is when I was doing like a lot of clubbing. I was part of this weird entourage, and we were just like club kids, I guess, and running the streets of New York. And the buddy of mine, he happened to land an opportunity to live in these buildings. And what he tells me is, yo, I need, we needed money till we can eat. We didn't do drugs or anything like that. He wasn't on drugs, nor was I. I was very young. In 1990, I was 15, 16 years old. And yeah, I think I was like 16. And we wanted to get some food or something to eat. What he would do is he would just, mind you, there were like 25 apartments on every floor. And it's like 40, 50 floors. Or maybe 30, 40. I can't remember. But these are tall, tall buildings. And at the time, they were like super tall. Like, whoa. Probably had 3 elevators in the hallways, 4 elevators. And he would go from door to door, and he would go down to the front. He would drop down to the floor, and he would just he would make sounds like pss, 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 pss. And I'm like, yo, dude, what are you doing? And he's like, yeah, I'm seeing if there's any dogs. He says because all the people, so many of the people that lived in these buildings all had dogs. So if he didn't hear any dogs, then he would check the lock, and he would slowly click the lock to see if the lock was open, because no one locked their doors in this complex. And he would proceed to go into these places. Me, I never went inside. I was terrified. I was like, nah, no, 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 no. I'm not going inside. I'm not going inside. I'm gonna stay outside in the hallway. And I only did this with him one time. I refused to do it again. Like the next time I hung out with him, he was like, "Yo, let's go hit a few floors, and I need to, let's get some money so we can get lunch or whatever have you." And I was like, "Nah, man." And at the time, I was kind of making money. I was making like $100 a day, hanging out with this guy. His name was Chip. He had blonde hair, black, dark skinned guy with blonde hair, and I was part of like his entourage. And he always paid $100 a day. And so I think I had money, but this guy, I think he had money as well. He wasn't poor. I don't think he was paying any rent. He was a young guy like myself. So he had access to money. But his thing was, it was like his wreck. He enjoyed knowing that he's in this huge high rise building and there's just tons and tons of doors that just open. No one locked their doors. It was such a secure building to get inside. And everyone in the building was loaded. Like we're talking about, this is like the upper middle class. This is like, everyone there at that time was probably making six figures in 1990. So, this was like, so now it would be like a $500,000. This is the building you in, and they just wouldn't lock their doors. And he would always open up these doors, according to him, because I only saw him open up two doors. Uh, he would go in. One time he came out with a ring. I was like, "Yo, dude, you gonna take somebody's ring?" And he was like, "Yeah, nah, he's good." And I saw him later on that night. I said, "Yo, whatever happened with the ring?" He said, "Oh yeah, I took it to the pawn shop, got me $100." I was like, "Oh, okay." Mind you, the ring was probably $5,000 ring, and he got $100 for it. So stupid. And it reminded me of these Melendez brothers, how these guys are filthy rich, but yet they just out there burglarizing their neighbors because their neighbors probably didn't lock the doors. It's just a group of people that one of the things that they enjoy is to feel secure. They love to feel safe. And they even test that safety by not locking their doors. They just, we're safe, and super liberal and had no weapons. They had like little dogs that was deterrent from him going in. He didn't want to hear any dog yapping, and he would just go to the bottom of the door and just to see if they'll come to the door. If they came to the door, he'd just try the next door, and he was just doing different floors. I'm sure he mentioned that he's like, he doesn't go to the same place. He always tries something new. He's like, almost all the doors are unlocked. I was just like, whoa. So I definitely thought about that watching this. Like, these kids are filthy rich and they're robbing people for wreck just because they wanted to. And then there was a really good scene when the father was like, when they got caught, they did get caught, and the father was like, they were like apologizing to the father, and the father's like, "Why are you apologizing? What are you apologizing for?" And we're sorry, for stealing and what we did. And then the father just flips out, and he's just like, "Only thing you should be sorry for is getting caught. I don't want you to get caught. If you're gonna do something, don't get caught." And I remember thinking, like, wow, that's a hell of a mentality. Like, this father is teaching his children to be like, what's those people that function in everyday society, but they're like sociopaths. Like, you're raising your children to be sociopaths if you tell them to do that kind of stuff. Like, just don't get caught. You're raising a sociopath. All right, but let me go back to a couple of days, a couple of weeks ago. A family member told me that this Netflix episode was out. Yeah, you gotta watch this new Netflix thing. It's called Monster, about the Melendez brothers. And I said, I don't know if I want to watch that. You know, basically my idea was that we got these guys, and these guys are they killed their parents, so their parents must have done something like terrible to them for them to kill their parents, because I'm like, and they were like, no, they was like sexually assaulted by the parent. And I was like, yeah, but if you're sexually assaulted by the parent, then you just move. You just go find somewhere else to live. You're not gonna stay, in abusive sexually. I said, these guys were like in their 20s. Who in their 20s, don't you just move? You don't. And I said, the only reason why they would kill someone is because they were trying to save others. Maybe the father was going to hurt other people. So to stop the father from hurting other people, they killed the father. And then Why did they kill the mother? I said because the mother was down with it to some degree. She had to have been involved. This is me not knowing anything. So then I watch this series and I start to say to myself, wait a minute. This series is where two things are happening at once here. We got these boys, these young men that kill their parents for the money and then claim that the father was sexually abusing them. Okay? And Netflix uses the power of the lighting and the power of the writing and the power of the acting and the power of television. You know, there was this book that was written, it's called Propaganda. And there was this guy who wrote this book about how to deceive people, right? He wrote this book. He's like, yeah, you know, I'm gonna show you how, like, he was like cocky too about how to manipulate people. That he was like, I'm gonna take a picture of these three, four women smoking a cigarette, and I'm gonna put the picture in the newspaper, and I'm gonna title the news. I'm gonna title the picture, um, "Women are taking back their freedom." And then one day, after this newspaper article came out, like 75, 80% of women went out and bought a pack of cigarettes. And he wanted to show the world that he understood the mind and what it takes in order to convince people to do things. Just like he was also involved in changing people just drinking coffee and toast in the morning, because they were like, yo man, everybody gets up in the morning in America and just has toast and a little bit of butter, a little bit of toast, and a coffee, and they're out the door and they're going to work. And the next meal they have is going to be lunchtime. How can we change that? By the way, I think this guy's name was Bernays, Edward Bernays, and he wrote this book called Propaganda. I read this book like 20 years ago. And Edward Bernays writes this book, and he says how he was like, okay, so we got to figure out how we're going to convince people to just not eat toast and coffee in the morning. We need them to have pancakes and bacon and home fries. And we need to promote this as a good source of nutrition to start your day. And he did it. And he did it within minutes. Like, it was just like the way they advertised it and pushed it. And this guy, Edward Bernays, just so happens to be the grand uncle of the guy who created Netflix. The guy who created Netflix, great uncle, was Edward Bernays, who created a book called Propaganda, who convinced women in one day to take back their freedom by starting to smoke, because he wanted to show how easily he could convince people. And it was through the power of that newspaper and that headline and that picture. It's something about that, the power in that headline, the power in, reading something and, making it like as if it's law, so to speak. And it's just so interesting is that Edward Bernays, he also had a great uncle. And that great uncle also knew about the human mind. And his name was Sigmund Freud. You ever heard of Sigmund Freud? Like, you ever hear how someone says something and they go, oh, that was Freudian. That was a Freudian slip. Well, this guy Sigmund Freud was just like really amazing guy who was able to understand the human mind the way his nephew understood it with propaganda, and the way his nephew or his great nephew understands the power in the documentary, the Netflix documentary, so to speak. So we have a whole line. You have to remember that we have this huge line of people that they understand the human mind. The guy who created Netflix, we can believe the story that yeah, he went up against Blockbuster and he wanted to start a new way so that we can get our information, and all these documentaries on Netflix and all these series on Netflix and all these movies on Netflix are just a product of a businessman who was able to kill the rental movie business. Okay. And then it could have failed many times, like Tesla, when he sold PayPal. He sells PayPal, has all this money, then he tries to start another business, which is the Tesla car company that we know now, which is not even a car company, it's like a technology company. And they just happen to have four wheels on it. But the car is recording 24 hours a day, nonstop, just creating data so they can say, whoa, 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 yes, it looks like a car. Yes, it has a steering wheel and four tires, but it's actually a data collector. And he almost failed a few times. So yes, even these elite people that are grandnephews and grandsons of these extraordinary minds can fail, absolutely. But we're talking about a group of people that will tell you your history. It's not like me. When I go to all my family is, everyone on my mother's side of the family is dead gone, right? Like, there's only two sisters left out of nine. It was nine brothers and sisters. The two boys, they're gone. The mother and father are gone. And there's only two sisters left. And if you say, I say to my aunts, I'm like, hey, I would like to learn a little more about my grandfather and the fact that he came here to this country and after fighting in World War II and became a teamster and owned a restaurant and owned a corner store. He seems like a pretty interesting guy. Like, can you tell me more? They're like, oh, we don't talk about that. That's what poor people, we don't talk about that. We don't discuss those things. I had an aunt, one of the two out of the two, there's only two left. And I said to her, I said, can you tell me about grandpa? And she said, we don't talk about bad things. I said, excuse me? I said, so you're not going to tell me anything about the guy? And she's like, no, we don't talk about bad things. And I was like, well, why don't you just tell me history? Just tell me history. You don't have to tell me bad things or good things. Just tell me history from your perspective. Because I'm curious to learn a little bit more about my grandfather and his legacy, because he still has a legacy. He has a home that I am the executor of in Bushwick, Brooklyn, that my aunt is living in right now. She's collecting rent from two tenants and she's paying all the taxes and all that kind of stuff. So I just leave it alone. I just back up and say, okay, y'all can rock, but I would like to know a little bit more about my family. See, these people like Edward Bernays and Sigmund Freud and the owner of Netflix, these people, they don't go through this drama of trying to know about their history. No, they're sat down very early on and told, like, listen, this is your great grandfather, and this is his brother, and you're descendants of this, and this is what they taught, and this is what they thought, and this is their mindset. And that gets passed on. So we got a Netflix organization here who comes from a lineage of huge thinkers and propagandists and shakers, mind control concepts and ideas. They know about this tele vision, and they know all about the programming that's happening into your brains. They know all about this. They know all the power in this. And I say that shame on you, Netflix, for putting out this crap called Monster, which is all tell all smut. This is a how to of that PO life. You know what I'm talking about. Let's not play that game. This is one of those kind of situations that people can just go and watch the first couple of episodes and just have like a whole shrine to a lifestyle that's sick and deprived. And I know what you're doing. I get it. Stop it. You can fool a lot of the people most of the time, but you can't fool me. I get it. I see that this is sick, man. That's why it took me so many days to watch this thing, because it was gross and it was like vomit in my mouth. So disgusting. This never happened. This was the minds of selfish bastards who wanted to not lose their lifestyle. They want to work and was willing to do whatever it took not to work, including take the lives of their parents. Come on. I had a mother that was one of the such a piece of work. I got up, I packed my shit, and I left at 14 years old. I was like, I'm out of here. I'm not dealing with this shit anymore. You don't take a shotgun and blow their brains off. I never even considered it. I never even knew that was an option. I never looked at the kitchen knives on the table while getting punched in the face and thinking I should defend myself with this. I never even considered it. Never even was a thought in my mind. I was more so I was gonna take it. I'm not gonna cry this time. You gonna make me cry, lady. I did some of that stuff, that tough guy shit where you can knock me across the damn room. Well, not a problem. I'm just gonna get back up. Never ever considered taking the life of my mom or my father or anybody who's done me wrong. These sick, murderous SOBs deserve to never come home from prison. They need to be in prison for the rest of their lives. Penalty, honestly. Not that I'm 100% for the death penalty, but Netflix is gonna push this smut. The first few episodes, the way they depicted the father, and then into details, and they explained it, and they talked about it, and then that scene with the mom, and they was like thinking the mother was gonna poison them. That was like cinnamon on top of their food, because they claimed that they would give their father all this cinnamon so that when gratifying him, the taste from his release would be bearable. So they constantly was putting cinnamon in everything that he ate and drank. So that was like cinnamon that she put on there, like to let them know that I know what you're doing with daddy. Absolutely sick. I see what Netflix is doing. They're living up to their Oedipal Bernays background. They're living up to their sick idea of us as humans, and pushing a huge narrative that we should not be duped by. We should not be duped by this narrative. No one is killing their parents like this out of fear and out of revenge. They did this because they wanted that paper. It tastes better with pineapples. Yes, I've been told that. I had a girlfriend that put me on a strict pineapple diet for a summer. Long, long time ago. That's from Hoaxa XO. Don't forget to press the screen twice. You tap the screen twice, that gives you the thumbs up. Let's get that done, and that'll be appreciated. So I watched this crap so you didn't have to. It was total smut. It was absolute smut that was put out there. Don't be fooled by this crap. Hmm. Yeah, the acting was amazing. And two things can be right at the same time. And I love you. And thank you for tuning in to my 9-part review of Monster by Netflix. The agenda pushers, the narrative givers. And I love you. And that's a fact.